We're live.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the March 8th, 2021 meeting of the University City Council to order at 6:31 p.m. I would also like to welcome Linda Schaefer as our acting city clerk this evening, as Ms. Reese is out of town at a continuing education event. So Ms. Schaefer, thank you very much for joining us. And if I could, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Councilmember Clay.
Present.
Councilmember Klein.
Here.
Councilmember McMahon.
Here.
Councilmember Hales.
Here.
Councilmember Kusick.
Here.
Councilmember Smotherson.
Here.
Mayor Crowe.
Here. Thank you very much. Before you have the agenda as presented. During the study session, no one had made any suggestions to change the agenda, so I would welcome a motion to approve the agenda as presented, unless someone does have a change to be made. Can there be a motion to approve? By Mr. Clay, seconded by Mr. Hales. Mr. Kusick, was that a second? Okay, thank you.
If need be.
Thank you. I had an overabundance at that time. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. One thing I would say as we move forward before the approval of the minutes, I think first off, I'm sure all the people watching us tonight and my colleagues and everyone from the city staff recognize that today is International Women's Day. And I think it's very important that it be the plural, Women's Day, not Woman's Day. And we are all very grateful to have so many important people, and particularly women in our lives, whether it be mothers, wives, daughters, aunts, nieces, grandparents, or grandchildren, as well as business associates and colleagues. So to all of the women, thank you very much for what you do to make our country and our world a much better place, and a well-deserved day of recognition for all of you. You have before you the study session minutes from February 22nd regarding the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Mr. Clay, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. You have before you the February 22nd regular meetings of the City Council. Is there a motion to approve? Motion made by Ms. Klein, seconded by Mr. McMahon. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Hales.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to nominate for reappointment Charles Gaskin to the Plan Commission. You might remember we appointed him back in either very late November or December to fill a 1-month gap. So this is his first term.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second made by Mr. McMahon. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. Please let the record reflect that Kathy Freese was sworn in the Urban Forestry Commission on February the 19th via Zoom, and that Joan Suarez was sworn into the CALIP on March 2nd via Zoom. Thank you all for your willingness to serve. And we did have a number of citizen comments provided to us this time. I know all of my colleagues have them, as well as the city staff. So all the citizens, thank you again for taking the time to share your thoughts and concerns and ways to improve our community through your comments. They have all been made a part of the record. And again, we appreciate it as you are patient with us as we move through this challenging time. Hearing nothing else, we will move forward to the city manager's report. Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor and council members, this first agenda item up under the city manager's report asks that you receive a presentation from Finance Director Keith Cole on the second quarter financial report. Mr. Cole.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Rose. Honorable Mayor and members of the council. I will do a presentation. I'm going to get ready to do a PowerPoint. I will share my screen. Can you see that?
Not yet.
Okay. Sorry about that. I don't know.
That's perfectly fine. Give it a couple of tries. And if you can't, we can move on to another item and come back if that's all right with Mr. Rose. Oh, there we go.
Okay. How's that?
Yep. Yes,
Can you
sir.
see it? Okay, let's see. I'm just gonna review the 4 major funds. And for the first one, this is the general fund. And so as the adjusted budget, this is as of, for the first 6 months, so as of December 31st, 2020, the adjusted budget was $24,420,111. The year-to-date actual, it was $10,119,926. And the actual as a percent of the adjusted budget was 41.4%. And compared to the same quarter of FY20, we had an increase of $391,863. And the key points here is that in December, we received 1/2 of the $2.4 million from the St. Louis County from the CARES Act. We had an increase in ambulance services of $302,000. And we recognized 206,000 protested telephone taxes that were from charter that we had as protested.
Mr. Cole, if I could just interject very quickly, because I've received a couple of questions regarding the use of the CARES Act funds. I want to make sure the mayor and council understand that these are funds that are reimbursements for primarily costs that we've incurred for public safety. So police, fire, dispatch, courts, and so forth. I think it's mostly just police and fire. So it's not a situation where we were given funds that we need to spend. We were provided reimbursements for those salaries. Thank you, Mr. Cole.
Yeah, that's correct. And then we had an increase of the use tax of roughly $99,000. And that was due to a lot of people, since a lot of people are working from home or staying at home, they're doing a lot of internet sales. And we had a decrease in parks and rec fees, roughly $300,000, due to the closure of Centennial Commons and the pool. And we also had a decrease in courts fines and court costs, roughly $260,000, due to the having courts being closed due to COVID. But overall, the revenues as a percent of the budget appears in line, as of compared to the same quarter as of FY 2020. For the general fund expenditures, we had an adjusted budget of $24,594,254. Year-to-date actual, it was $11,343,533. And as a percent of the actual budget was 46.1%. And we had compared to the same quarter of FY 20, we had a decrease of $189,017 of expenditures. And the key points here are just due to the COVID, we just continued to have the community center and the Centennial Commons closed, during the second quarter. Therefore, we had some reductions in expenses of roughly $232,000 compared to the same quarter of FY 20. And then for this year, and we contributed for the non-uniform pension. We made the contributions in the month of December rather than waiting till the end of the fiscal year in June. And the benefit to doing it in December is so that these contributions would be reflected in the actuarial valuation for the year. And the actual valuation is done on a calendar year. instead of fiscal year. So I've been a benefit on the pension plans. And note that the contributions, it's part of the budget. It was budgeted. The overall expenditures as a percent, I mean, it's it's reasonable when comparing to the same quarter of FY20. And FY20, the percent was right at 46%. So we're comparable to the prior year. And we move along to the capital improvement sales tax fund. The adjusted budget was $2,050,000. The year to date is $811,246. And as a percent of the actual compared to on the adjusted budgets, 39.6%. And we had an increase of 31,253 compared to FY20. And so key point for his sales tax revenue for the first 6 months of the fiscal year, has shown signs of a little increase compared to the same quarter of FY20. And the capital improvement sales tax, it's the revenues based on per capita. The capital improvement sales tax, the adjusted budget was $1,335,467. Year to date is $175,676. Actual as percent of the adjusted budget, it's 10.7%. And we had a decrease of $226,279. And here's the decrease is holding up. It was due to holding up on the construction projects for the first 6 months. And the construction projects, based on the amount of revenue that's generated from the sales tax. So we're just monitoring, the revenue stream to see, how much we get compared to what projects that we expense on. And then we transferred out $300,000 to the general fund for the public works projects. And this was part of the CIP budget. And comparable, the expenditures, as of the second quarter, were well within the budget for FY21. For the park and stormwater sales tax fund, the revenues was adjusted budget of $845,000. The year to date is $449,589. Actual as a percent of the adjusted budget is 53.2%. And we had a decrease of $156. So, so compared to the same quarter of 2020, it's very consistent, with what from the prior year of 2020. And for the parks and stormwater sales tax, the revenue is based on point of sale. And the park and stormwater sales tax, the expenditures, the adjusted budget, $672,262. And the year-to-date actual was $156,962. And actual as a percent of the adjusted budget is 23.3%. And we had an increase of expense of $44,578 compared to same quarter of FY20. And the expenditures increase was due to purchasing of equipment for some vehicles. And another thing to note is we transferred $41,280 to the general fund for the interfund loan payment. And again, the expenditures are well within the budget for FY21. And for the public safety sales tax revenues, the adjusted budget was $1,448,500. And the year-to-date actual is $650,334. And the actual as a percent of the adjusted budget was 44.9%. And there was a decrease in the revenues compared to from the same quarter of FY20 of 186,554. And this was mainly due to, there was an error that by the Missouri Department of Revenue in December of 2019, they sent us too much money, and roughly probably 175,000 too much. And then they corrected it in the month of January of 2020. So when we do comparison, that's why there's a big a decrease compared from this between December of 2020 and December of 19 and December of 2020. And we also received, yes. We received $11,205 from the insurance company, and this was due to just insurance reimbursement due to a police car being totaled. And the revenues, appear very, within reason with the budget. And with the expenditures for the public safety sales tax, the adjusted budget was $1,026,953. Year-to-date actual is $329,036. And then the actual as a percent is 32%. And we had a decrease of 172,371. And it's mainly the decrease was due to purchasing the police vehicle laptops, the docks, and the ambulance in the first 6 months of FY20. And so far in 21, the purchases have been towards body cameras and supporting equipment. And we've transferred out $1.3 million to the general fund for the interfund loan and salaries, benefits. And we also did $505,100 to the police and fire pension fund for the pension contributions. And so far, first 6 months, the expenditures are, within the budget. And with that, I can answer any questions. I will stop share.
Are there questions from members of council to the Director of Finance? Mr. Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Crowe. Thank you, Director Cole. Just had a couple of questions. This first one may not necessarily be to the finance director, but more to the city manager. Just forgive me. Where are we on the body camera rollout? That was one of the items that was talked about as a purchase. Where are?
Yeah, I would need to confer with Chief Hampton to tell you specifically where we are. So I'm happy to provide you with an explanation, but just don't know what the details of that project are currently.
Okay. Two other quicker items. Director Cole, the pension contribution, can you just run me through that again? I know you explained it, but it didn't quite click for me.
So every year we budget, we allocate funds to contribute to the non-uniform pension plan and the police and fire, the uniform pension plan. And so we allocate so much money, and then we invest that, we send that money into our investment with UMB Bank, and that's where our pension funds are holding. And we send that money in December so that so it gets included in the actuarial evaluation that our actuary completes for the pension plan.
Casey, if I can step in, I think
that helps.
if Mr. McMahon may be able to help. As I recall, remember we're on 2 different years. The city council, our fiscal year is different than the pension plans. And we were always making a contribution in June when in fact the actuary wants all of our plans updated as of December 31st. So and we had the cash sitting around, and I mean that in a respectful way. And so the contribution was made in December so that it allowed the pension plan books to be more in line with what the contribution was, instead of waiting until June to make the contribution, then the pension plan would have been, frankly, it would have been more significantly underfunded because we wouldn't have made the contribution by year end. It's simply a total timing difference between how the city does its fiscal year and how the pension plans are recorded and they're done on an annual basis. I hope we can continue doing it in December, because I think if we have the cash flow available, it's far better to have the contribution made in December, because that's when the plan the plan numbers really for most purposes, they sort of end on December 31st. And it would be great to have that contribution in whenever possible.
Okay, thank you. And my final question goes to under the capital improvement sales tax expenditures. There were some projects that were put on hold, and I think I vaguely remember that. Do you know is there examples of some of the projects that we put on hold?
Honorable Mayor, Keith, I think I could at least address one of those projects. For example, some of the equipment purchases, if we're going to do a tractor, I wanted to ensure that our revenues were at least running the way that we believe they would, and understand that we reduced the amount of revenues that we thought we would get in this year, but they at least had to be running at that reduced level. It appears that they are, based upon the first 6 months. So I believe at this point I've released most of those capital projects to advance, when I also released the various transfers.
And were streets impacted by that?
Streets may have had a short delay, but streets, the improvements typically occur in the summertime. So that it would have been de minimis, the amount of delay that would have been impacted.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Hales.
Thank you. Well, this was actually my second question, following up on what Stacy said. On the capital improvement, parks and stormwater, and public safety expenditures, am I interpreting what was said correctly, that it looks like we took a very cautious approach and maybe backloading some of the expenditures based on how revenues looked? So the second half of the year will be more than would normally be if the revenues are consistent with what we anticipate?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Hales, that's correct. I wanted to ensure that we didn't know what was going to happen in this environment with COVID. So I wanted to give it 6 months before authorizing moving forward with many of the capital projects. Some of them, wasn't all of them, but some I wanted to delay. I think we were comfortable enough that we're going to be okay at this point. And so I believe I've released all of the CIP projects at this point.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted a little clarification on that. And then my second question is really for Mr. Cole. I think it was the second item on page 2 of the key points, said increase in ambulance services. That seemed to be listed with increases in revenue. I'm assuming that's an increase, the services is an increase in revenue. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's the money that since we started back the ambulance, then that's compared to December of 2020, we hardly had any revenue coming in. And then as of this year, it's all ambulance revenue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from members of council? Hearing none. Mr. Cole, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor and council members, the second item up under the city manager's report asks that you reverse the prior council's action to construct a new police station. If you recall, some of you, in March of 2016, the then city manager made a recommendation to the then mayor and council to construct a new facility. The council approved that item and provided the city manager with authorization to basically advance that initiative. At this point, we have more information than what even the then city council had, especially as it relates to the ability of the annex to accommodate the needs of the police department. So I am recommending that the council reverse the action of the prior council. And would respond to any questions that you have.
Thank you. Prior to respond to any questions, since this will be a matter for a vote, can we have a motion to introduce, and if so, a second? Motion to introduce. Ms. Klein, is there a second?
So moved.
Seconded, Mr. Kusick. Questions? I think we probably all have probably the comments or questions, maybe not, for the city manager. So I will yield if someone else would like to begin with questions and or comments about where we are on this. Mr. Smotherson.
Thank you, Mayor Crow. I guess my first question is why? Why now?
The Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, the space needs study has been completed, as well as the various reviews of the annex to determine if the police department, if it can meet the needs of the police department. Both of those things came back positive. And so it certainly will be my intention to recommend that we advance a bond initiative that would result in the renovation of the annex.
But again, it's been, I guess, 5 years, whatever it's been, but pretty much we've ignored this. I mean, so what's the point? What brought this about? Because we've not addressed this at all, and now all of a sudden this is being addressed. My understanding was because it wasn't binding, as I was told. Why are we addressing this now?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, the completion of the space needs study and the decision that the annex could indeed accommodate the needs of the police department only occurred fairly recently. I would not say that that this council ignored the prior action of the city council in 2016. However, there was additional information that was sought by this council so that you can make a more informed decision about what was the most reasonable way to advance meeting the needs of the police department.
Well, okay, because I'm going to take my time with this one. I'm sorry, but anyway, I just kind of want everybody to understand that this is, we're here addressing this by circumstance, and it's just so many different things that's happened since they took that vote in March of 2016, and I don't agree with the statement that was written on the cover page of this, that at the time of this action the council was unaware the annex could be renovated to address the needs of the police. I think they were completely aware of what it was. I just think that the way the report was written. But the bottom line is that understanding the circumstances put us here. And I really want this council to look at what we're about to do, because what we're about to do is going to set an example for future councils. And you are, I'm just telling you that you are absolutely setting an example for future councils. Based on what's previously happened, you had city manager resign, we had an interim city manager, we had I'm gonna try to cut this down and actually say this. We had a 3-3 council during the 2017 council, and nobody talked to each other. You had one side that wouldn't talk to the other side. And so we literally sat there and nothing got done. I mean, there were just so many things that happened. And the council members that voted for this did not run again or resigned or whatever circumstances that happened. Again, circumstance. So the bottom line is what I'm actually addressing and saying to all of you is this, and that is, this should not be done by council. we can take the vote. I'm not saying that. We can take this vote. But this decision shouldn't be made by council because of the ebb and flow of the back and forth. 5 years ago, we made March 2016, build a new police station. Here we are actually saying, put it back into the annex. Now, but what I want to say is this, and again, in 2022, I guarantee you, this is going to come up. Depending on the makeup of this council, this is going to come up in May of 2022. I guarantee it. So what I'm actually saying is the way to not have this council do this back and forth, the one consistent is the people. And I think that the mayor has said this, and regardless of whether he remembers this or not, and I'm going to take my time with this, but it's just interesting that even in 2016, the then council member Crow said at that time, he said that because there is no doubt that the citizens of this community really want to do right by their police department, and it is not council's money, it's the residents' money. Then at the State of the City address, the mayor, and I do appreciate the statement, and said that, we want to hear from the people. Is basically what he said. We want to hear from you. Your police force, it is you we're talking about protecting. So again, based on, and not just based on his statements, but I'm saying this, the one consistent is the people. Just like they decided about the historic buildings, and just like they've decided about parks. This is the only generational thing that we have to decide. Opus is not generational. Avenir is not generational. This council is able to make those decisions and make decisions about things that are going on in this city. This back and forth with different councils making a back and forth decision isn't correct. Now, but if the people are given the opportunity, and so again, what I'm asking this council to do, we can have this vote and we can take it. We know what this vote is going to do, what it's going to be. But what I'm asking is that this council direct the city manager to move forward, and in August, put this on the ballot for the people to vote on, whether to build a new police station or renovate the annex and put the police back into. So again, that's my statement, and we can move forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smotherson. Other comments made by members of council? Mr. Hales.
Thank you. So I guess I've taken a bunch of notes here, and I guess the first thing I would say is this is a major policy decision. We have faced a number of significant policy decisions. Olive and 170 certainly was one. In this case, I don't understand. I think that we all were elected to represent our constituents, and we all take phone calls every day, as I well know. I think we all well know, in emails. I think kicking this back, like, hey, if citizens want to do what citizens did in 2015 with Prop H and gather thousands upon thousands of signatures, if that's important to them, by all means, that is their right to do, to put it on the ballot. I can tell you I have gotten 0 emails, 0 phone calls from my constituents saying, I think we need to put this to a public vote. I've gotten a lot more emails and phone calls and had conversations with people very concerned about, okay, if you're going to build new, what's the plan? And I will say that in 2015, I don't think that there was a plan for renovation. That is why Prop H, frankly, came along, because the only plan that I recall at that time was a development plan in University Heights. that I think many of us remember that just awakened that neighborhood. And, you know, if you read the minutes, there were all kinds of problems with what was presented a number of years ago. It's rare to have as many people pack a council meeting as we had for that meeting about this subject. And particularly the focus was on the suggestion that the annex was not usable. We had engineers, we had architects, we had people with backgrounds in historic preservation, citizens saying, this makes no sense. And that is what it is. I will say that also that, you know, in terms of circumstance, we are here, yes, because of a circumstance. One of those circumstances, I think, is that we are here at this time, and there has been a lot of turnover and change with this body, in large part as a consequence of this issue 5 years ago. And there were a lot of issues, clearly, but this was no small one. As I said, there was no plan then, and I haven't heard a plan now. And the other thing that I think was very different 5 years ago is the analysis that was done in the last 18 months in terms of what are the needs. Is it possible? What is possible? I don't think, I mean, I've read both reports, and I don't think that there's a comparison. And then as far as prior councils, I have to come back to my colleague, Mr. Smotherson. We have clearly multiple times voted to make policy changes. We talked about the ambulance. We voted to rescind, and you were my co-sponsor on that, rescind resolutions very recently, actually. And to me, this is just another example, I think of trying to make a very thorough analysis and make the right decision and kind of right a number of wrongs that were either done without the proper thorough review or in some cases for other reasons. So I do think that as a matter of sort of checking the boxes, yes, this was done in the past. I thought it was the wrong decision in March of 2016. And you can read my comments in the minutes, and there's an email that I had written that was added to those minutes as well. I think it was I thought it was likely the wrong decision then. And we have an obligation not only to provide our police with an absolutely state-of-the-art facility, but we have an obligation to all of our taxpayers, all of our constituents, to make the most of what we have. And there is no other purpose that has been suggested for the buildings. So I apologize for being verbose, but just wanted to get that out. Thanks.
Mr. Clay.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Crow. My colleagues won't be shocked to hear that I have some just concerns. I'm not necessarily to this, but where it falls in the process, I think speaks to the fact of having a process. The council has the right to reverse on that already, I think, in very appropriate ways. But it seems in a process that was coherence, not necessarily the right term, but this would have been among the first things that we did, as opposed to the last, because what this does is allow for effectively a clean slate. It would say what was done in the past we didn't believe had the appropriate process, and I will say, even though more aligned with the outcome of that, I would have been beating the drum about this then too, because follow a process. So the outcome to me is less material than the process that we use to outcome. So again, I find myself in a situation where I may not necessarily even disagree with this particular vote on concerns about the process, where it falls in the process.
Yeah, Stacy, just as a heads up, you're kind of coming in and out, just so you know that. And I think we got everything you said, but just is there another? Clearly I have comments to make too, but I'll save mine for the end. Ms. Klein.
I just want to say that as I thought about this issue, I think for me, there was a problem in pushing this decision when it was made. There were a lot of requests that the decision be postponed until more information was gathered. And also pivotal to that was that there was going to be the vote on Prop H the next month, which I think really, affected this decision. So for me, if, possibly if council and the mayor had waited, then there would be more pertinent information to make a different decision. So that's my perspective.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cusick.
Well, I just don't know how to say this diplomatically, but so I'm just going to say it. The previous council was discussing this in 2016, and the police are still in trailers. When are we going to stop talking about this and do something about this? And I think that maybe Mr. Rose's recension of this previous council action can be the first stage. We've had the space needs analysis studies completed. We've looked at our bonding health. And I think our residents, when Councilmember Klein and I had our town hall meeting, I guess some of the responses or the questions that I received previous to that meeting through emails, people are overwhelmingly, like Mr. Hale said, overwhelmingly in favor of doing something with the annex to put the police in that. However, I think the bigger question is, when are we going to make a decision, and when are we going to start moving forward on this? We've been, I think we need to get moving on something.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. McMahon.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be brief. I think it's been said pretty well, but I think the council has the authority to make this change. We don't have any contracts or anything to build a new facility. The steps that were outlined in the motion back in March of 2016, I don't even know. I think there was only one vote on a funding mechanism that was taken after this, and it lost. And I don't think they ever brought forth another way to fund it ever again. So it really is it was really something that had lost its teeth at some point, which created us a situation years later where we really have to start over because the world changed and prices changed, and we had to understand what could and couldn't be done. So that is clearly something that council had to revisit. Whether we do this now or later really doesn't make, to me, much of a change, because I don't think what was done in 2016 really had much weight left behind it anymore. So cleaning this up and moving forward in that direction, I think just makes some sense that we do it now and move it forward. And if the citizens didn't believe this was the right action and there's an election coming up, well, then they'll let us know. I mean, that's that's what happens. And if a new council would be seated, they would have that opportunity to say, well, this is why. If they can't do that, then at some point, somewhere along the line, a council voted and said, the annex will be the home for our police. So theoretically, the vote in March of 2016 shouldn't have been taken, but that's not the way it works. That's just how things go. So I'm fine with moving forward. And I think I agree with Mr. Kusick that now's the time to get the police. I think everybody agrees. Now's the time to get the police out of those trailers and get them into a state-of-the-art facility that we'll all be proud of.
If I can now have my moment. It's intriguing. You guys have all provided a different perspective. It's almost been a historical trip down memory lane, some of it more challenging than others that waited. Even reminds me that I'm the only one that was left on this council when that action was taken. Everybody else has either moved, resigned, or decided not to run again. And I do think that does parallel, though, that many of those decisions not to run did have consequences from previous decisions that people on that council made. A couple of things I would like to say is I hope that when you look back at the actions taken in 2016, that everyone will look at the questions that were asked, particularly by myself and Ms. Carr, and the answers that were given or the lack thereof. I think that should tell you the difference between the process that we're going through now and the process that happened then. If any of you have questions that you haven't had answered by the city manager or by the rest of us, you got to tell me what they are. You may disagree with us, but I think everybody's questions have been answered. I think we've done the space needs study. We've done the assessment of the annex. The one thing I would probably disagree with many of you on is I really don't think this action tonight is even necessary. I think the action taken by a previous council that laid there dormant and nothing happened, and every single member of that council is gone except for me. I think the fact is, if it was an ordinance, yes, we'd have to change the ordinance. But if it was simply a vote taken on a recommendation and they're gone and nothing happened, I think we could have just started completely from scratch. But I appreciate the fact that we are, in essence, if you will, cleaning up the record. I guess the next thing that I'd say is, I think we're ready to go as well. Clearly to so many, again, I don't want this to sound preachy, but to a lot of you guys as council members, I think a lot of you chose to run or were elected because of the actions taken by previous council members. I mean, that's the reality. And I have not had one single person ask me to bring this to a vote of the people, not one. I have tons of emails from folks saying, save the annex. I've got that. I get it. And people may disagree in some ways on that. But no one is saying that they feel like they need a public vote on this. And when I say I want to hear from the people, I still want to hear from the people. I want everybody to send me, if you want to send me an email, send me a telephone call, contact your council members, contact the city manager. We always have time for public comment, but that's a big difference than asking for a public vote on something that we were elected to make a decision on. And so to me, decisions have consequences and elections have consequences. And this is one of those moments. So again, I would not have necessarily taken this path to rescind this from, I really don't want that to hopefully be a precedent that we have to take, that if an action was taken years ago, that we need to go back and, in this case, get rid of it. I think we did nothing with it and it could have just died and that we've gone on. But I do believe that this gives us the opportunity now, as Mr. Kusick said, to get this thing going. So, any other questions or comments? Mr. Smotherson.
I just wanted to say lastly, and I appreciate what you said, Mayor Crow, because I actually agree with you in that regard, because we shouldn't be doing this. If in fact it's not necessary, we shouldn't be doing this because this sets a bad example. But the other thing that I will say is this: if anybody can show me where, in reference to Prop H, is there anything in Prop H when that passed that had anything to do with the police? I don't think so. Nothing at all. It was just about saving the historic building and putting that decision in the hands of the people. also, the last thing that I will say, and I will leave this alone for now, and that is that, no, we weren't given all of the information. I've said this consistently from the very beginning, and that is we were never given a chance to discuss what the annex could be. That never happened. And it did not happen. We never had that opportunity. We never had a professional analyst like Trevor's go through that and say, well, this is the alternative option. And that has not happened. So again, I'm done. Let's move on with the vote.
Well, if I believe I get a chance to reply to some of that. I do believe that Proposition H and the police, we really don't get the luxury of making these decisions in silos. We make decisions in totality for the betterment of our community. And we know the reality of Proposition H. And we also, I think, know the members of our community, particularly how a large number, if not a majority, and I actually believe it would be a majority, clearly want historic preservation to continue in University City. And the other part, which I may come a little across too harshly on to my colleague from the 3rd Ward, and that is that if you wanted something else done with the annex, then it is incumbent upon those who want that done to convince their colleagues to have that study done and to fund it. And to the best of my knowledge, that has never happened. And no person who is opposing this has ever come forward with any plan to tell me what should be done in the annex, nor have they come forward and said, we need to pay for it. Not once. So at the end of the day, haven't used that one in a long time, we have covered a lot of ground. And it is clear to me that our colleagues have heard from the people they represent, and it is time to move forward. If there are no other comments, Mr. Cusick.
Thank you, Mayor Crow. I hope this is appropriate, to ask Mr. Rose what the next steps are.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Kusick, the next step will be to provide on your next agenda an item that authorizes me to advance the renovation of the annex, as well as I believe we may have the language for the ballot at that time. I'll need to confer with our city attorney, but it will be to advance the project to make it ready for the November ballot.
Thank you.
So you have a motion and a second before you to reverse the decision of council made back on March 28th, 2016. Ms. Schaefer, I believe, due to the fact that we've all taken our bites of the apple, it would be appropriate for us to do a roll call vote on this.
Okay.
So if you don't mind, if you would please call the roll on item number H2.
Sure. Councilmember Klein,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Hales,
Aye.
Councilmember Kusick,
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson,
Nay.
Councilmember Clay,
Nay.
Mayor Crow.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you. The ayes have it. And again, to all of my colleagues, I appreciate the professional way in which everyone has this type of a conversation. If we can now move forward with item number 3.
Honorable Mayor and council members, at your prior study session, we had an opportunity to discuss some of the challenges with the leasing of our athletic fields as it relates to insurance requirements. This item went to the Parks and Recreation Commission for a recommendation, which we have outlined as a part of the staff report. I am recommending that the council approve the ability to offer to ease the insurance requirements for those organizations that would agree to sign a waiver. I would also ask for authorization as we become more aware of the insurance requirements made by surrounding communities, If we find that we are above the minimum requirements for authorization to relax the insurance requirements to the minimum amounts. So I'd respond to any questions that you have.
As I recall, this is an item that's going to take council action. Am I correct, Mr. Rose?
Mayor, that is correct.
So before we ask questions, can we have a motion? Motion to approve the recommendation made by council, by City Manager Rose. I believe we had Mr. Clay's hand up, and I believe we had Mr. McMahon's. I believe that, I think so. And Ms. Klein, I believe you were the first one who wanted to speak. So I think I got the motion, the second, and now Ms. Klein.
I just wanted to make a comment on looking at other municipalities and considering what they're doing in reference to this issue. You know, some of the thoughts that I've had, I've looked at different websites and I see that different municipalities offer different services in terms of their youth activities. So I think that one of the things that we need to consider is that we really don't offer much in terms of league play or organized sports activities. And so, you know, I think that some of the insurance requirements and things like that are required in other cities cover things like league play and that kind of thing. So, you know, my position is that because, you know, we don't really offer those services and our you know, even in our schools, I mean, sometimes it's not the Parks Department that offers those services. Sometimes it's the schools that offer an organized sport opportunity for children. And, you know, because we don't really have that for, at least for the grade schools, we don't have anything. We have to rely on volunteers and we have to rely on them to organize and to put everything together and then to participate in leagues in other cities. So my position is that, you know, based on, you know, we have sovereign immunity and we, you know, we're taking on a minimal risk, you know, of you know, taking on frivolous lawsuits that would then require our resources, that we absorb that risk as, you know, part of our subsidy for not providing some of those services or so that our students can participate in these sports, because these costs get passed on to our residents, you know, who don't have these opportunities that we're providing right now. And I hope that in the future we can, you know, hopefully provide more of these opportunities. But until that time, you know, and then when we do provide those opportunities, we can, I think, you know, in my opinion, require more.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Klein, I think that what is being recommended is really a no-cost solution for. I was really thinking about the smaller organizations that might struggle with some of our insurance requirements, but the large organizations would be able to take advantage of it as well. The recommendation is designed to minimize the exposure that the city would have from lawsuits. And normally we do that by requesting insurance, but because of what I just mentioned, wanted to provide still the same objective, which is to minimize our exposure, but how do we do that in a manner that would not cost anyone anything? And so that was why we came up with the idea of the waiver. I think most large organizations have insurance anyway. So we're really just talking about some of the smaller ones that may be impacted. I also had a chance to reach out. We're a part of the St. Louis Area Insurance Trust to get their recommendation. And while they don't require it for insurance from from these organizers, they do strongly encourage it. And the reason for that is because they know that if an incident happens, that it is very likely, you know, that we're going to get sued. And so it would be good to have that insurance in place or a waiver to minimize that exposure.
Yeah, and I understand that, you know, you're recommending, you know, not requiring that right now. I guess it was more for future considerations.
Other questions or comments? Mr. Clay?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Crowe. So just so I'm clear on the recommendation, because I think there's some minutia here that I've had a lot of conversations with folks about, and I just want to make sure that it's covered. So the insurance requirement for these leagues that have most of the topic of recent conversation. Am I saying that correctly?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Clyde, I missed some of that, what you were
Sorry.
stating. But
We're having a difficulty getting all of your comments.
what I can share with,
And so there would not be, for the leagues that we've been talking about, there would not be an insurance requirement for them. Is that correct?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Clay, the option that any league would have is the option of providing us with a waiver, saying basically that they won't sue us, or alternative to that, providing insurance that meets our minimum requirements at this point. And what I've asked in addition is, I'm not so sure our insurance requirements may be above what we really need. So I want to have an opportunity to take a look at that and reduce that down to the minimum level if appropriate to do so.
And so as I understand it, there are two issues. There's the insurance issue, and then there's the COVID protocol issue. And it's my understanding there's some issue with the waiver related to COVID and the high school in particular, and their ability to procure the necessary signatures from visiting teams seems not to be an issue at the level where the kind of youth league is self-contained. Can you speak to that, the COVID side of the waiver?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Clay, if insurance is provided, that's all that we are asking for. I'm not 100% sure at this point how the COVID suits would advance, or if they would advance, or if we would be immune to that. So we believe that the insurance, should someone contract the coronavirus doing play and they want to sue, we're certainly very hopeful that the insurance would cover that, or our sovereign immunity would protect us. I'll defer a little bit to our city attorney, John Mulligan, to make sure I'm on the right track with that. John? And
I may have cut out, my question was more towards, it's my understanding there was an issue with the high school and its ability to have those who are playing against them hear complete waivers. That seemed to be some area of concern. I think the waivers, particularly as it relates to COVID, I think we're not an issue with our youth leagues, but more with the high school. And if we may have gotten something even from the superintendent about that. So,
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Clay, we received documentation from the superintendent that they have universal insurance that will cover both the high school as well as the visitors when they're on the field. So I believe that the issue relative to the high school has been resolved at this point.
Okay.
I believe Mr. McMahon had his hand.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm not muted. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to, I think that's not, I think I agree with Councilmember Klein that I think the real key here is if we could get these to be city-sponsored activities, the insurance requirement would just disappear automatically. So if there's a way for us to work to make these city-sponsored where we're more in control, that helps to alleviate that. So working towards having more city-sponsored activities would be helpful in that regard. I think what we're really looking at least for this time, I would suggest, is making it as easy as possible in the short term to get some of these baseball teams out there. And if the paperwork that's necessary can be worked on to limit that somewhat, that might help alleviate some of the concerns I think the folks were presenting to us. Not that it's perfect or that we can finish that in the short term, but making that process easy now, and then working with that as we get into the fall and soccer teams wanting to practice on our fields, then maybe we can develop that process to make it a little bit less daunting for the, as Ms. Klein said, the volunteers who have to fill out a lot of that paperwork. And it seems to be it might lean towards excessive, but I think that fits what Councilman Clay was saying. Some of that might have been generated due to COVID. And if we can come out of that, maybe all of this will get alleviated. But I think that's where we should, those are the focuses we should be, in addition to giving them an alternative that's not going to encumber a lot of expense on these small teams. I don't think they're leagues that are coming in and renting the fields. They're individual teams that are in other leagues in other cities. And that's why it's becoming cost prohibitive, because it's a team that doesn't have the backing of the league behind it because they're not on league fields. So that's where it breaks down. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Smotherson.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor Crow. I do want to say that I agree a lot with Councilmember Klein in that, and because what I will say is, and I agree with the Councilmember McMahon also in that if we had city leagues, then of course we would want to sponsor them, and that would fall under our insurance and all of that. But we don't have city leagues other than Redbird Rookies, and I'm not even sure if we have a city-sponsored league or team other than that, and I'm not even sure we're going to have that this year. But the thing that I would actually say is that we don't have leagues. We don't have teams playing on our fields, and we shouldn't be trying to make that harder, opposed to trying to build interest in having kids back on our fields. And that's what we should be looking at. Right now, these teams are just looking to practice. That's it. And so what I would say is that if they've got waivers that they've signed with their team and or the leagues that they play in, then they feel the waiver responsibility. Because again, when they come to U City, what they're doing is, and I'm not aware that there are any leagues in U City, what they're doing is practicing, and that's it. So I'm looking at trying to build interest in coming back and having people play and kids playing on our fields, not restricting that in any way.
Honorable Mayor Pro Tem Smothers, I think that the recommendation allows for that to occur while still minimizing the exposure that the city would have from an incident that might happen there. So there is no cost to them if they opt to provide the waivers. They don't want to incur the expense of insurance. We provide a no-cost solution for that as well.
I believe Mr. Hales is, yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly, I think the other thing I hope that either we or Mr. Rose and his staff might look at is some of the conversations we've had seem to center around some of our neighbors have insufficient field availability, but have, and I presume that's because they have pretty robust programs. And is there any kind of opportunity that we might have to work with some of our neighbors that could alleviate some of their needs while simultaneously, ideally, creating greater access for our kids?
Any other comments from colleagues? Unless Ms. Klein.
I just want to make one more comment, just because I know in these situations, it might seem like getting a waiver is a simple thing, but sometimes it's very difficult to, contact parents and get these waivers in. So, I mean, I understand the city's need to ask for these waivers, but I don't know if there's a consideration of leniency and how much time it's going to take them, or, because if it takes 2 weeks to get them on a field, that's their practice time. So that's just a consideration that I'd like added to the conversation.
I'm not probably quite as compassionate as Alina on that one, maybe. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. I do think that I think the city actually has responded pretty quickly, including the park commission with a very quick meeting. So hopefully we're addressing the citizens' needs. My hope that is in return for that, all of the people who have contacted us will take particular ownership in trying to help get the waivers for us. And I'm sure that Gregory and staff, if there's, pick your number, 95% waivers, I'm sure that everybody's going to use their best judgment. But I also believe that all of us were contacted, by the way, in a very professional manner by a number of parents and a number of citizens, and we appreciate that. And I think we've responded in like kind. And I hope now that we are moving forward with this, that now they will take the ball in their hands and move it forward, and we can get this all wrapped up as quickly as possible. Anything else? I mean, I'm not sure that unless someone else wants to have a roll call vote on this, and I think we're probably okay to do a voice vote on item H3, the insurance and waiver requirements as suggested by the city manager. You have a motion and a second before you, and you have discussion. Mr. Smotherson.
Well, no. I just want clarity on what we're actually voting on, because there are different aspects of what Parks Commission recommended, and different than what necessarily the city manager's recommending. So I'm not sure what we're voting on specifically. For instance, Park Commission says recommendations doing away with requirements for insurance. So what are we voting on?
Mr. Rose, can you give us the language?
Sure. What you're voting on at this point is accepting my recommendation regarding the two options that would be available for the use of our athletic fields. One option would be for providing insurance for the fields, and the second option would be for providing waivers. So it actually does reconcile with the park commissions that we have the potential of doing away with the insurance, but in return, they would say that they won't sue us.
Mr. Clay, did you have your hand up?
I did, and for some reason I'm watching papers and can't find the specific item you're referencing, but I think some of the insurance issue is related to the amount. And so is the amount articulated in what you said? It sounded like you need to research what the appropriate amount was, because some may not have it at the original told them of the 3 million. So it's not just a matter of having insurance, but having insurance at a specific amount, correct?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Clay, the intention would be to continue our review of the insurance that's currently being required by some of the other surrounding municipalities. Also engage our insurance trust to determine what do they believe is a reasonable amount and make adjustments if need be. So that's why I'm asking for that additional authority to do that.
So if there's a league that's trying to do something now that has insurance, says, I don't believe that we don't waiver option, but we have insurance, but we have it for $1 million. At this point, know if that's sufficient. Is that?
Yeah, I would hope to look at it on a case-by-case basis. I think that Mr. Dunkel will conclude his review, as well as I'll end up contacting our Slate insurance company. So I don't know that if they have insurance, the amount is going to be a major challenge for me at this time. It's okay. Just we weren't able to finalize exactly what is that minimum amount, but I'll end up working with Slate to make that decision, as well as with the city attorney.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Okay, the ayes have it. We'll now move forward to unfinished business. We have before us bill number 9426. Ms. Schaefer, if you could we please have the second reading of that bill?
Bill 9426, an ordinance amending section 230.130 of the municipal code of the city of University City, Missouri, relating to delinquent refuse collection fees, collection policies, and hearing and appeal.
Thank you. May we have the third reading?
Bill 9426, an ordinance amending section 230.130 of the municipal code of the city of University City, Missouri, relating to delinquent refuge collection fees, collection policies, and hearing and appeal.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve? Motion to approve by Mr. McMahon, seconded by Mr. Clay. Is there discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Klein,
She's
I
muted.
think she's on mute.
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Hales,
Aye.
Councilmember Kusick,
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson,
Aye.
Councilmember Clay,
Aye.
Mayor Crow.
Aye. Thank you. The ayes have it. We'll now move forward to new business, resolution number 2021-2, the budget amendment. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Mr. Hales, seconded by, I don't know that I see a second. Seconded by Mr. Cusick. Thank you very much. Is there discussion? From council or from staff?
Honorable Mayor, we have Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole, is there any information to present on this item?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think everyone has the information provided in the packet from Mr. Cole, which is approximately a number, quite a large number of pages, about 11 of them. So the details there. There's been a motion and a second. Those in favor of resolution 2021-2, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We'll now move forward to bill number 9427. Who would like to introduce? Mr. Hales. Madam Clerk, could we have the first reading of bill number 9427?
Yes. Bill 9427, an ordinance approving a final plat for a major subdivision of a tract of land to be known as Market at Olive.
Thank you very much. May we have the, oh, I apologize. Let's go to bill number 9428. Who would like to introduce? Ms. Klein. May we have the first reading?
Yes, Bill 9428, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of tax increment revenue notes, Olive Boulevard Commercial Corridor and Residential Conservation Redevelopment Project Area 1, Series A and B of the City of University City, Missouri, to provide funds to finance certain redevelopment project costs and approving certain actions in connection with the issuance of the notes.
Thank you very much. And I apologize to my colleagues. I'm sifting around for my next page of my agenda that I simply cannot find. So I will have to beg to you and say, are there any other bills to introduce, or are we moving on to council reports and business?
Council reports.
Thank you. I apologize. Council reports and business. And again, since I don't have my agenda, I apologize. Is there a discussion item in this as well, or is it just going to be reports?
There's under other, oh, sorry. Mr. Rose.
Honorable Mayor, there was one item up under 4, discussion and business. Item A is reopening plans for Centennial Commons requested by Councilmember Smotherson and Clay.
Got it. Thank you. I apologize again to everyone. Are there any reports from commissions or committees that you liaise from? I believe Mr. McMahon?
Yeah, just briefly, not to revisit an issue we already talked about, but to thank the Parks Commission for holding a special meeting to thoroughly discuss the issues of the ball fields that we just recently talked about. They all took the extra time to address that issue and address it very professionally and thoroughly. So I wanted to thank all the members on the Parks Commission for taking that extra time to help get that moved fast and forward so that the residents can and hopefully get this taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cusick?
May I ask Mr. McMahon a question about that very meeting? Because I've had residents reach out to me about some of the concerns, and I was wondering if you could elaborate on something about that.
I will do my best.
There were some residents that were concerned about the teams or the players would have to submit some type of a report on how they are preventing the spread of COVID, or the team develop a team developed COVID prevention plan. Is that something that they are still being required to do, or did that discussion come up?
That discussion did come up, and it was something that the folks said and I think it's a process that's ever changing, because if the county comes out with new guidelines, which I mean, I think some new guidelines, I don't know if they're related to ball fields and whatnot, were even coming out today. So I think that's one of the process that I was suggesting in my comments earlier, is to work with these folks to say, how do we streamline this? Because it did seem to be a bit daunting to come up with a lot of that. And the other part of it is to balance that against the risk of, well, how do we even, if it's a threat of a lawsuit for a disease, is it really a significant risk that we're going to be sued for somebody that develops COVID, and how would they connect that to the ball field necessarily, or something the city could be liable for? But we have to balance those risks. But I think that was part of the concern. It was discussed, but I think that's part of where staff has to look to what the county requires, so whether or not there could be anything that has to be put in place so that they know what they can do, and to work with, if there might be other folks that have put together such plans, to share those with people who don't have one and say, here's a template, that's all you got to do. So that was kind of where it was at.
And then, if I may, one more question. I had heard from 2, maybe 3 residents that they were concerned that the fees that the teams have to pay to use the ball fields, that even if there was a rain out and they weren't allowed to use the field, that they would still have to pay for that day. But in the past, they did not have to pay for that. Can you address anything about that? Or is
that wasn't part of the agenda at the Parks Commission meeting. I think it was mostly the waivers and sovereign immunity and and the process of how those things were established. So just the general fees and rainouts did not come up, but I understand that's a concern too.
Okay, and I don't know, would Mr. Rose be able to address that, or is that a discussion for something else?
Yeah, we're kind of going a little bit far afield here, Mr. Cusick. So, Mr. Rose, do you have anything you want to add, or can we move on?
Mayor, Councilmember Cusick, happy to understand that that's a question that you have, and I'll work with Mr. Dunkel, because that is not an agenda item, to provide you with a response.
Very good, thank you.
Mr. McMahon, do you have more?
Just to say, I rarely have commission reports, and if I'm going to be an inquisition when I do, I may stop.
I think Mr. Hales had his hand up at some point in time.
Yes, thank you. So kind of following Mr. McMahon, I'd like to thank the Plan Commission, they are going to have another special meeting, which I think makes 2 in 2 weeks, and just really commend all of the work that they are doing. They are extremely dedicated and focused. And frankly, as if we listen to the mayor's state of the city and all of the development things going on right now, that is likely to be the busiest commission in the entire city for some time to come. So I cannot say enough about the work that they're doing, they're putting in time outside of meetings, tremendous amounts of time. And I think we all owe them a gratitude for their service. Thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, to all of the my colleagues and staff who took the opportunity just now to text me the page of the agenda I was missing, thank you very much. I did find it. I apologize, but thank you. Technology can help us out every now and then. If there's no other reports from the commissions, I will turn it over to Council Members Clay and Smotherson.
Yeah, I will defer to Councilman Smotherson. I'm Councilman Clay.
Thank you, Councilman Clay, and thank you, Mayor Crow. On this item, I was reviewing the city manager's process for opening of Centennial Commons and the pool, and what I wanted to actually address about that, and I'm asking this council to reconsider some of the things that he's actually stating in his plan, because I think that we're well past a lot of the COVID concerns to a certain degree, and that a lot of the gyms, a lot of the municipalities are open. They are open and functioning. And that's something that we need to consider and look at, and that's what I'm asking this council to consider. And that is, for instance, I've actually added 4 items, and that is to move up the gym opening to phase 2. I'm not sure if we're all aware, but we probably are by now, that based on the city manager's plan, he's not opening the gym until 2022, until January of 2022. I'd also like to expand the hours in phase 1 and include openings on Sundays. And also have a discussion about the reservation time, allowing walk-ins and daily passes. And what I mean by that is, when we talked about with walk-ins and reservations, if there is a capacity issue, and if there's a guideline that we have to follow, I'm not sure why we have to have reservation time and why we're not allowing walk-ins. So, and just so that everybody understands, I'm a member of the Y. I had to join the Y because our gym is not open. So I'm working out at the Mid-County Y. But as you know, I'm just asking that we reconsider some of the plan schedule and move forward and update those. That's what I'm asking.
I know that Mr. Roseman wanted to reply. Same point in time. Was that me getting the backup? We can have a discussion about it, but there really can't be a vote tonight because this was not put on the agenda as a voting item. But I'm happy to, if people would like to discuss it, that's fine. I think that one thing I would try to make sure is that I hope that some of these conversations happen between my colleagues and the city manager as he's moving these items out, because I think that some of it is a very appropriate to have a conversation with the city manager about what his thoughts. But I think Mr. Rose probably having this item on the agenda, you probably had some idea that some of these things were coming forward. So I'm not sure if you want to spend some time talking about it now, or if you'd rather have council members chime in.
Honorable Mayor, I can have Mr. Dunkel kind of share what the rationale was behind the opening plan. There are 2 things that I would ask that you keep in mind. One is that our community is different from some of the surrounding communities as it relates to age, ethnicity, but also the organization is different as it relates to where we are from a staffing level at this point. And so those are 3 of the things that I think certainly impact our ability to, as far as how we reopen our various facilities. One of the things that we are paying a great deal of attention to is, in addition to what the St. Louis County Health Department recommends, we're also paying a great deal of attention to what the CDC is recommending. And so where there are communities that may be much more aggressive in the opening of some of the facilities because they are different from us and they have the ability to do that. I think a good example, one thing that that the CDC is recommending, for those people that are even vaccinated, they're still recommending that you not fly. And there's a reason for this because there's still so many unknowns about the virus. I think we're just taking a very cautious approach to the opening, as well as doing what we believe we can with the staff that we have in place. Mr. Dunkel, can you share kind of the rationale behind the opening plan?
Yes, Mr. Rose, Mayor Crow, members of the council. Yes, when we put that plan together, we have spoken to multiple communities that have recreation facilities, learned from their practices. If they were to do it again, what would they do different? We've reviewed the county health guidelines at the time, which are ever changing, and we try to keep up to date on that. As well, at the same time, when we put this together, we're going back probably a month ago, looking at things. COVID was a little bit different a month ago than where it is now. And we didn't look at this as to be an end-all be-all plan. We knew that these were scenarios and a work in progress as where we were at that time moving forward. And as Mr. Rose has stated, one of our biggest challenges is staffing. You know, unlike some of the other communities, they didn't furlough or lay off employees. And so they were able to continue to move forward. And they are still open on a limited basis to a certain degree. With us right now, I'm looking at us for just Centennial Commons alone. For us to open within the next couple of months, I'm going to have to hire 12 plus people that we do not have today. Now, most of those, well, 10 of those are probably going to be part-time employees with 2 full-time employees that we're working on hiring right now. So staffing is going to be our biggest challenge in anything that we do. And some of that was based on rolling out a limited opening, was kind of based on what staff can we do. If we're able to fill all those positions and we get them trained and ready to go, that scenario maybe change a little bit of what we can open. And also at the same time, we have to look at what the county guidelines were. A month ago, we only had 25% capacity. Now they've raised it to 50. Next month, depending on what the COVID rates are, they could raise it back up or they could even lower it more. We don't know. So this is still a work in progress. And I'd hate to say one way or the other, this is what we're doing, what we're not doing. We have to continue. It's evolving as we move forward, again, with the guidelines as well as staffing. Also on staffing, just overall from a department, it's not just staffing for Centennial Commons that we have to fill. Even though we are contracting out the majority of the work at the pool, we still have some in-house positions such as cashiers, part-time we have to hire. Right now at the golf course, I have probably at least 5 positions right now. I need to hire today because the weather has changed a month earlier than normal. People are out, we're having nice days, people are golfing. I'm working out at the golf course behind the cash register because we do not have enough people at this time. We're trying to get that going. And on the parks operations, we're 2 full-time people short that we're trying to fill those positions. So overall, we're looking at least 16 plus part-time positions and 5 full-time positions that we need to hire pretty much between now and the next month or so. So those are our biggest challenges as we move forward.
So we're attempting to open the facilities up in a manner where we know that we're doing it, where the residents as well as the city staff that are working within that environment are going to be safe. And so, yeah, we don't want to do it in a manner where we just say we're going to open things up and we don't have the level of staffing necessary to ensure the safety of the people inside those facilities, or it places our own staff at risk.
But Mr. Rose, what I'm asking is why don't we have staffing? Why don't we have enough people to get this rolling? Why is that?
Honorable Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, if you recall, when COVID initially started, more than a year ago, we made some decisions to reduce expenditures, which resulted in the layoff and the furlough of some of our staffing. As the CDC or the health department decides, well, because we have started vaccinating now, so we think that the virus is going to decrease. They may say that, like the county said, we're going to implement these things immediately. Some other cities did not go through that because they have a much more robust budget than what we have. So they were able to keep their individuals on board, maybe assign them to other locations. We simply did not have that luxury, in my opinion. So as we get the word that we can now have X number of people, X percentage of people that can be within a particular facility, we have a delay time to where we need to add staff to accommodate that. Now again, we don't know if these levels will be sustained or if they will lower them. So the intention is that we believe we're in a financial position now to whereas if they did, let's say they decided you've got to stop allowing anyone in, I think that we're in a financial position now where we could at least retain those employees for a period of time. So to answer you, our situation is different than other cities.
Well, okay, Mr. Rose, I'm sorry. I do apologize. I'm not in agreement with what we're following. I'm not in agreement that we're using the line that we have a different demographic. We have this demographic. I'm not in agreement with that. I think that's wrong because that's not the demographic of the Centennial Commons of who uses that. But what I'm really more concerned about than anything else is that we're going to spend another summer not offering any services with Centennial Commons, as your plan states, with even the gymnasium. We're going to literally not have those facilities or services available to the people that we represent and we take care of now. And this is what's, and so that's really the shame of it, because we weren't, and maybe that's the council, I don't know, I'm not saying fault, but there is nothing. We're doing absolutely nothing to provide anything for this summer again. I understand what COVID was last year, but COVID is not what it is now. And then, and the other thing is I'm looking at this is the St. Louis American. And if you can see that says summer camps. What this says is it's telling me it's offering all of these facilities and camps that are offered during the summer. U-City is not in there. And that's the thing, that's the shame of it, is that we have the size of the municipality that we have. And that we're not offering those kind of services, and there's smaller municipalities offering them. But again, the one thing that I will say is that the people that you are stating, because of our demographics, that you're trying to protect, you're also limiting them and taking away some of the critical things that are needed for this summer. We're not offering those things. And that's the shame of it. And we're gonna spend another summer doing that. So that's the part of the reason why I wanted to have this discussion and say that, and just make sure that we're aware of what we're doing. I mean, that's just not, to me, not acceptable at all.
Honorable Mayor Pro Tem Smothers, and the two areas that we're focusing on right now, one is the opening up of Centennial Commons. The target date for that is May the 28th, as well as the pool. So I would take exception to saying that we're not doing anything when we're working very hard to try and make sure that those are open in a very safe manner, one that doesn't place at risk our residents or our employees.
But again, understanding that there are other places and facilities and that are operating and operating safely. They are doing that right now. So again, I do understand safety. I'm not talking about opening. I'm simply saying I do understand staffing. But again, I'm just simply asking and stating that you're going to have the gymnasium closed till, and not open this summer. And I think that that's a critical aspect. I think that how we're addressing our hours is a critical aspect. And maybe I have to take this up at a different time, but again, I'm really disappointed in what we're doing for this summer. And I do understand that you're gonna have the fitness area and the pool open. I don't think that's enough.
So can I interrupt though? What I'm trying to understand is in Centennial Commons, we have Gregory saying it's opening in May, and we have Boyne say it's opening in January. So what all I'm hearing the difference is if he's saying the basketball courts and the gymnasium part aren't opening up right now, but the rest of it is opening up in May. Where am I missing this? Because with all due respect to my colleague, this isn't really a discussion amongst your colleagues right now. This is you having a conversation with the city manager that could have been held at any point in time. So I would like for all of us to have a chance to understand what's going on. I'm still not sure this is the right format for it, but I'm happy to have it in public. My question is, you're talking about a gymnasium and Gregory's talking about Centennial Commons. So what is opening in May and what is opening in January?
Mayor, I think Mr. Dunkel can share with you at least the facilities that we're targeting for May. We don't know when some of the other facilities will open because we provided target dates, but those dates are contingent upon, such as the gymnasium, are contingent upon when we're able to have staff on board so that we can open those facilities. So, Mr. Dunkel?
Mr. Rose, Mayor Crow, members of the council. Basically, again, what we rolled out a month ago were scenarios based on where we were at that time, trying to make projections on staffing, and as well talking to other cities, doing a slow rollout to be conservative, to make sure that we're safe, as well as we had staffing. Again, this is not written in stone saying that it can't be changed. This is where we were at a point in time, looking forward to what we thought was possible to open based on being able to get staffing in place and based on St. Louis County guidelines at the time. Again, it's evolving. It can always change and be updated as we move forward.
Well, but someone just answer my question. May. What is happening in May?
May, we were looking to open up all the fitness facility portion of Centennial Commons, which is the free weights, the cardio, and the track.
Thank you.
We're looking at May.
And the swimming pool, am I right? Outside.
And the swimming pool, yes, sir.
Okay, so the part that Councilmember Smotherson is talking about is the gymnasium, the pickleball courts, the basketball courts, and the public and the public meeting room. So am I correct in that?
Primarily the gymnasium.
Right. So you're, but we've got the, I would like to go to, I would have liked to have gone to Centennial Commons more often. I'd probably be more healthy if I was, but I think, again, I think the basketball courts get their use. I think the pickleball courts get their use. And I think the gymnasium equipment gets plenty of, the fitness equipment gets plenty of use. So at least we're starting with the fitness equipment, and then so again, the concern right now is Mr. Smotherson. I hate to be the slow one here on this train, but you're upset about the basketball courts inside?
Well, no, I'm also upset about the time. In the first phase that they're open, they're not open on Sundays, open on Saturdays from 7 to 12. I don't think that is. I think what we need to do is catch up. Not, because this has already been established. These facilities and places are open. They are open and are functioning in a safe manner.
Well, my only point, again, I don't really have, all I would say is in my business, I can assure you that all of us are operating on reduced hours and on reduced staffing. And I'm not sure that too many places are open, full throttle. And if they are, more power to them if they do it a little bit differently. But I really do want to say to everybody, if we're going to have a discussion like this, I really would like it to be a discussion amongst all of us. And I know that Councilmember Klein has a comment, but I do believe that a large part of this conversation could have occurred outside of a council meeting.
Well, yes, sir. But I was instructed that, I did that. But I was instructed that to actually.
Okay. Well, if you were told to put it on the agenda, then so be it.
Yes,
My,
sir.
my thoughts are that hours of operation is probably not something that any member of this council wants to spend too much time going down into the weeds that far. If we want to talk about maybe some of the functions, but I think we also know that we have a staff that we trust, and we're probably making the same uncomfortable choices that a lot of communities are making. So let's let some other folks talk. Ms. Klein.
I just had a question about the gym portion of Centennial Commons and if that needs extra staffing or if that could be made, a decision to open that could be made quickly.
Councilmember Klein, members of council. Part of that is based on staffing and part of it is what is St. Louis County guidelines going to be at that point. When we made this decision as a scenario, again, a month ago, there were different viewpoints on gymnasiums and open basketball and all those sorts of things. So yes, it is evolving. It could change.
I think Mr. Hales was first and then Mr. Clay. Mr. Hales.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple of things I want to put out because I think adding some perspective to some of the comments that have been made is really quite important here. I have heard everything my colleague has said about other fitness centers being open. I think what our city and all of our neighbors have had to do, and I don't know that any city in St. Louis County has been immune to having to make difficult choices of some sort related to COVID and the budget. And, the question is, what is that? And yes, I know of two of our neighbors very nearby that briefly shut down their fitness centers and facilities before reopening. I will say that in both cases, it was not without not just one incident, but multiple incidents where it had to be shut down, deep cleaning, and was challenging. And they were open, during really the height of the pandemic. Now, one of those two, while they chose to keep their recreational facilities open, one of those two actually dropped a police officer off of each shift and didn't hire vacancies, put a moratorium on their police hiring. That may be over at this point, but I had that from a very good source. And the other one that kept their facility open cut back on their street sweeping and eliminated most, if not all, of their leaf pickup in the fall. So it is very much a balancing act. And these were the priorities that, or the choices that we made. I think most of our residents were very pleased that we didn't cut public safety and very pleased that we didn't cut our leaf pickup services and street sweeping over the course of last year. I do agree that this is a moving target. And I think all of us would love to see our being able to exceed the expectations that have been set by Mr. Dunkel, who has the responsibility of onboarding as many as 16 plus people, and not only training them, overseeing the training of them to do the jobs they're hired to do, but also training them to be consistent with the ever-changing COVID protocols, which is a whole different set of responsibilities. And I think we all want this everything open to the greatest extent we can open it as quickly as possible in a safe way. And, if we can get it open sooner, that would be fantastic. I don't think there's any disagreement probably among us on that. But, this was not anything that I think our city manager or any city manager has experienced in their entire careers going back at least 100 years. And I think the choices we made, while not perfect, as my other colleague would say, I think they were good choices to make. And I would like to see everything get back open. And I don't envy Mr. Dunkel's task ahead of him with all of those interviews and hiring and juggling everything you have to do at this time. So thank you.
Mr. Clay.
Thank you, Mayor Crow. Clearly, COVID has presented a challenging situation for this municipality and every other and every person. I was initially very supportive of our more conservative stance with this. As we've gone forward in time, I will say that it does seem communities with similar demographics, because yes, there were communities that different demographics than ours. So I would not use those as peers, but other communities with more similar demographics have opened up and have been opened up for a while, largely without incident. But I think some of that is in the past. I understand the challenges of staffing. Where I would focus my attention now is the opening of the gymnasium and some of the summer activities, because I think gymnasium, while it may seem on the surface a small thing, does speak to a level of equity. If we look at who utilizes certain amenities within Centennial Commons and certain services within Centennial Commons, we know that there's some demographic differences associated with that. And we know for people in our community who enjoy basketball, and we know young people of all stripes enjoy basketball, but we know our African-American population enjoys basketball. That is one of the places that they can play and have an outlet. So the gymnasium not being available while other pieces of Centennial are available create a real equity issue. And also as it relates to our summer programming, the camp and some of the other things that are taken advantage by different demographics and different folks within the community. I think that's something we really need to be sensitive to. And again, I get staffing. I've tried to staff in public entities. You cannot hire as you can as quickly in a private sector. But I think our goal needs to be equity. And as we move in one area, we need to move likewise in another. If we're going to open Centennial, we need to be real intentional about the gym as well.
Ms. Klein.
I just want to say that I agree with Councilmember Clay just said. I agree with everything he said.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other comments? If not, thank you very much for the opportunity to have this discussion. And now we can move now into council comments. Do any of my colleagues have comments they would like to make prior to going into executive session? Mr. Cusick.
Thank you, Mayor Crow. I would just like to remind yourself and all of the staff and my fellow council members that 1 year ago, minus 2 days, was the last time this council, this body, met face to face. So our next meeting, we've reached a milestone that we have now been meeting, or our next meeting will be that we have been meeting Zoom meetings for 1 year, that we've been in the midst of this pandemic for that long. And I personally just want to say thank you to everyone for getting us through the last year, because again, we've been doing this now for over almost a year. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, sir. We all feel it. We all feel it too. Mr. Smotherson.
Thank you, Mayor Crow. I do want to say this to my colleagues and those that are watching, and in the future, those that actually view this later down the line. We really need to think about the people that don't have the internet access, email access, because I've recently had to sign up 3 people that called me for COVID vaccine because they don't have emails. And some of these websites, if you notice, they require an email address, and they have no way of doing that. So I just want to make everybody conscious to help your neighbors, look out for your neighbors. and make sure that if I had a lady that called 88 years old, no internet, no email. So I helped her sign up for a COVID vaccine, but be aware of your neighbors, family and friends, and let's take care of everybody and get them signed up. Thank you.
Amen. Anybody else? Hearing none, I would welcome a motion to go into closed session according to Missouri Revised Statute 610.021, legal actions, causes of action, or litigation involving a public government body and any confidential or privileged communications between that public governmental body or its representatives or attorneys. Is there such a motion?
So
Motion
moved.
made by Mr. Hales. There's a second by Mr. McMahon. Any discussion? Hearing none, would you please call the roll? And your mute is on, Linda, just so you know.
Okay, Councilmember Kusick,
Aye.
Councilmember Smotherson,
Aye.
Councilmember Clay,
Present, or aye.
Councilmember Klein,
Aye.
Councilmember McMahon,
Aye.
Councilmember Hales,
Aye.
Mayor Crowe.
Aye. Thank you very much. To all the members of the public, thank you for joining us this evening. To my colleagues, a 3 to 5 minute break, and then we'll pick up on executive session.